Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the year 219 BCE, to a hilltop city on Spain's eastern coast, a place of shining marble, olive groves, and restless hearts. You're standing in Saguntum, a city so proud, so stubborn, it's about to light the fuse for one of the greatest wars in history. The sea below glitters like bronze under the rising sun, and from the walls you can see distant columns of dust. The Carthaginian army is coming. The air smells of salt and iron. Market stalls stand half empty. Children cling to their parents. The citizens whisper about the man who leads that army, a young general named Hannibal Barca. They say he swore an oath as a child, before his father and the gods, to hate Rome until death. And you, standing in Saguntum, are about to see how seriously he meant it. Before we start, if you're new here, welcome to Bedtime History. Tonight's story is Fire and Fate. Drop your city and local time below, because no matter where you are, you're about to witness how one siege in Spain set the ancient world on fire. Saguntum wasn't just any city. It was rich, Greek in origin, but Iberian in soul. A trade hub nestled between mountains and sea, with strong walls, fine vineyards, and a spirit that matched its stone. It sat south of the Ebro River, which marked the uneasy boundary between Rome's sphere of influence and Carthage's growing empire in Spain. That line, the Ebro Treaty, was supposed to keep peace, but treaties mean little when ambition is stronger than law. After Carthage's defeat in the First Punic War, Rome ruled the western Mediterranean, but Carthage refused to die. Under the brilliant general Hannibal Barca, Carthage rebuilt its power, not in Africa, but in Iberia. Gold, silver, and men flowed from Spain, feeding an army that was as fierce as it was loyal. And when Hamilcar died in battle, his young son Hannibal took the oath that would shape history. I swear eternal enmity to Rome. Years later, when he became commander in Spain, Hannibal inherited more than his father's army. He inherited his vengeance. By the time he looked towards Saguntum, he already controlled most of Iberia. The tribes of the interior followed him like a storm. He knew Rome watched his rise with suspicion, but he also knew Rome was distracted, stretched thin, overconfident, and far away. Saguntum was a problem. It was an ally of Rome, but technically outside Roman territory, a grey zone. To Hannibal, it was both a provocation and an opportunity. To the Carthaginian council back home, it was a test of nerve, and to the people of Saguntum, it was home, sacred and unyielding. As Hannibal marched north with his legions of Africans, Iberians, and war elephants, word spread faster than the wind. Villages emptied, shepherds fled to the mountains, merchants closed their stalls. Saguntum sent desperate messengers to Rome. Our city will fall unless you intervene. In the Roman Senate, men debated. Some urged caution. It's too far, too costly. Others demanded war. But politics moved slower than armies, and Saguntum would not wait. Now, on the plain below, Hannibal's army arrives. Dust clouds billow like smoke. Trumpets blare. Rows upon rows of men unfurl banners beneath the walls. Iberian tribesmen shout war cries, their faces painted red. War elephants stamp and trumpet, their tusks gilded for terror. Behind them stands Hannibal, young, lean, with the calm of a man who has already decided how this will end. From the walls, Saguntum's defenders watch. They know Rome isn't coming, not soon enough. They know what's at stake, but surrender isn't in their nature. Their commander, Alorcus, rallies them. Better to burn with honour than to live in chains. The crowd roars back in answer. The first arrow flies, slicing through the sunlight, then another, then 100 more. The siege of Saguntum has begun. Below, the Carthaginian lines tighten like a fist. Siege towers rumble forward. Rams crash against the gates. The defenders hurl stones and oil, shouting curses in every language they know. The sea wind carries the smell of fire. From a hill behind his lines, Hannibal watches in silence, his cloak snapping in the wind. His officers wait for an order, but he gives none. He is patient. This siege isn't just about victory, right? It's about sending a message to the world. Far to the north, in the marble heart of Rome, no one yet understands what's happening here. That this siege, This single spark will ignite a war that will roll across mountains and continents, that will shake the Republic itself. But you understand. You can feel it in the air. The tension before history breaks open. The Fall of Saguntum isn't just a battle. It's the beginning of revenge. The morning sun over Saguntum burns bright and merciless, glinting off shields and helmets like shards of glass. The siege has begun in earnest now. Below the city's proud stone walls, the Carthaginian army spreads across the plain, a living grinding machine of men, beasts, and iron. Dust rises from the movement of thousands, and the sound is relentless. The steady clank of tools, the bellow of oxen dragging siege engines, the barked orders in Punic and Iberian tongues. From the ramparts, the defenders watch with grim determination. The city's walls are tall and thick, built of massive limestone blocks quarried from the nearby hills. Behind them, the narrow streets wind upward to the Acropolis, where the temples to Hercules and Artemis look down over the sea. Inside the walls, the people move like a hive, smiths hammering new spearheads, women carrying water, priests burning incense and chanting prayers. Saguntum's population is perhaps 9,000 souls. A small city against a great empire, but one bound together by pride and desperation. Hannibal studies the city from his command post, his eyes narrowing as the sun catches the towers. He's young, barely in his mid-20s, but there's a cold precision in him, the kind that comes only from being raised in the shadow of defeat. He remembers his father's words on the day of Carthage's loss to Rome. "They will come for us again, my son." Unless we strike first, Hannibal intends to do exactly that. Saguntum, to him, is not a city. It's a symbol. It's the first domino in a chain that will tumble all the way to the gates of Rome. His army is vast, a blend of cultures and tactics. Seasoned African infantry with heavy shields and curved swords, fierce Iberian tribesmen with long spears and painted faces, Numidian cavalry riding light and fast, and at the heart of it all the war elephants, massive lumbering shadows that make the ground tremble. To his soldiers, Hannibal is more than a general. He's destiny made flesh. He rides along the line, silent, his dark cloak trailing dust. When he passes, the men raise their weapons and shout his name. "Hannibal! Hannibal Barca!" He doesn't smile, doesn't wave, he doesn't need to. His silence is command enough. The first assaults begin with methodical fury. Engineers roll forward siege towers draped in wet hides to resist fire. Rams begin to pound the walls with bone-shaking rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. The Saguntines respond with equal ferocity. From the battlements they hurl stones and flaming pitch. Archers loose arrows until their fingers bleed. A well-aimed stone smashes a Carthaginian ram to pieces. Another crushes a siege tower, sending soldiers tumbling like dolls. For days this continues. Attack and counterattack, heat and exhaustion, fire and dust. Hannibal watches, measuring the walls, the morale, the rhythm of resistance. He knows time is his ally. He doesn't need to take the city in a week. He needs to break it slowly. Starvation and fear will do what his rams cannot. Inside the city, however, defiance only grows. The Saguntines gather in the agora, shouting oaths to the gods of Greece and Iberia alike. Rome will come, they tell each other. Rome will save us. Messengers slip out under cover of night, carrying pleas north across the mountains to the Roman Senate. But Rome is far away, and politics there moves like a tired beast. The senators debate treaties, pride, and timing. Some urge action, others warn that intervening could provoke another long, costly war. "Let Hannibal have his petty Spanish quarrel," one voice says. "He would not dare challenge us directly." Meanwhile, the city burns. Weeks pass. The Saguntines grow thinner, their faces drawn. The wells begin to dry. They ration food, first grain, then oil, then even the olives that once made them rich. Still, they hold. The Carthaginian dead litter the fields below, the air thick with the smell of blood and rot. Hannibal's patience begins to stretch, so he changes tactics. He orders his engineers to undermine the walls, to dig tunnels beneath the city and collapse its foundations. The work is brutal, slow, and deadly. The defenders hear the faint groan of earth beneath them and know what's coming. They dig counter-tunnels, setting fires underground to suffocate the Carthaginian miners. Smoke pours from cracks in the ground like the breath of demons. For every trench Hannibal fills, another opens. For every breach the Saguntines rebuild. The siege has become a war of attrition to will against will. At night Hannibal stands on a ridge overlooking the city. The walls glow orange in the torchlight. From the Acropolis he can hear the distant sound of singing, low, mournful, defiant. "They sing for courage," his aide observes. Hannibal doesn't answer. He simply watches, eyes fixed, jaw set. To him, every note of that song is another reminder of why he must never stop. Then, one morning, a messenger from Carthage arrives, dust-covered and breathless. The council urges caution. Avoid provoking Rome directly, they say. Hannibal reads the message, crumples it, and tosses it into the fire. He's done waiting for permission. He looks at the city again, proud, isolated, still holding, and murmurs, almost to himself, "This is where it begins. The siege will last 8 months, 8 months of blood, smoke, and fire. But when it ends, the world will never be the same, and far to the north Rome still sleeps. The siege drags on, and the city of Saguntum becomes a furnace of endurance." By the second month, the olive groves outside its walls are charred to ash, the vineyards trampled into mud. From the parapets, the defenders stare down into a wasteland that used to feed them. All that's left now are the bones of oxen and the shadows of vultures circling endlessly in the hot Spanish sky. Hannibal, meanwhile, grows more deliberate, more methodical. His command tent rises on a ridge overlooking the walls, surrounded by banners bearing the sign of Baal Hammon, the Carthaginian god of fire. His officers, veterans of countless Iberian campaigns, gather each dawn to receive his orders. "We will grind them slowly," he says in a tone so calm it chills the blood. "Their strength is pride. Pride burns with patience, he's not wrong. The Saguntines have turned pride into a weapon. Every day they repair their shattered gates, reinforce their crumbling towers, and hurl back the Carthaginian assaults with desperate ferocity. They fight like people who know there's no tomorrow. From the city's Acropolis, priests lead prayers to Hercules, their legendary protector, while the soldiers sharpen their spears by the flicker of torchlight. But no prayer can summon reinforcements. Rome has not moved. The Senate argues still, trapped in its web of procedure and denial. Ambassadors sent to Carthage return empty-handed, having been met with smiles and shrugs. The Ebro Treaty, they're told, doesn't protect Saguntum. The city lies beyond the agreed line. Technically, Carthage has done nothing wrong. Technically. In truth, Hannibal has crossed not just a border but a line in history. He knows it, and perhaps Rome does too. But for now, neither side says the word war. Inside Saguntum, food dwindles. Bread grows thin, then disappears altogether. Children begin to collapse from hunger. Yet the Council of Elders refuses surrender. Their leader, Alorcus, stands in the forum, his voice hoarse but steady. "We are not Rome's slaves, but her allies. We stand for our own honour." Some of the younger citizens mutter. Allies who send no help are hard to die for. Still, the city holds. Hope is a fragile thing, but it glows like an ember in their chests. Hannibal watches it flicker from his ridge. "They will eat their own dead before they yield," he tells his lieutenant Mago. "Then they will come to me, not as enemies, but as lessons." The attacks continue. Siege towers grind forward, rams hammer the walls day and night. Fire arrows streak through the air, hissing like serpents. The defenders answer with everything they have: boiling oil, stones, flaming javelins. The air fills with the crack of impact and the screams of dying men. At one point, Hannibal himself joins the front lines, directing a push toward the western gate. He strides through the smoke, calm as ever, his tunic dark with dust. A Roman historian would later claim he was struck by a spear and kept fighting, blood soaking his arm, his eyes like iron. Whether true or not, the story fits the man. He's not here for conquest, he's here for destiny. Still, the siege takes its toll. Hundreds of Carthaginians fall. The Iberian allies, once eager, begin to grumble. "The city is cursed," they whisper. "The gods protect them." Hannibal answers their fear with a ritual, a massive sacrifice before Baal Hammon's altar. The night glows red with fire, drums echoing through the valley. By dawn, the soldiers are silent again, their doubts consumed with the smoke. Inside Saguntum, the opposite happens. Faith wavers. The people gather at the temple, praying for Rome to come, for sails to appear on the horizon, for the sound of marching legions. But the sea remains empty. Only gulls cry across the waves. By the 4th month, the city's streets are lined with the sick and the dying. Yet somehow, the defenders still climb the walls each morning. They sing as they fight, hoarse voices carrying through the smoke. Hannibal hears it from his camp, and it stirs something in him. Not pity, but respect. He knows the sound well. It's the same sound Carthage made when Rome starved it out decades earlier. That's the irony of this siege. Hannibal is fighting a reflection of his own people's past. The siege of Saguntum is Carthage's revenge made visible. A city crushed for Rome's sins. But revenge, like fire, doesn't stay contained. At night, Hannibal walks alone through his camp. The men watch him pass, their torches flickering in the wind. He looks at the stars, the same constellations that will soon guide him across the Alps, and murmurs to himself, "This is where the gods begin to notice." In the distance, Saguntum glows faintly with torchlight. The outline of its walls stark against the moonlit hills. The wind carries a faint sound. Hammering, rebuilding, still fighting. Hannibal smiles faintly. "Good," he whispers. "Let them resist." The world must see what happens when Rome's promises are worthless. He turns away and walks back toward his tent, already thinking of the next phase. The breach, the slaughter, the message. Because the siege of Saguntum isn't just the end of a city, it's the birth of a war that will haunt the world for generations. The siege has stretched into its 5th month, and the once glorious city of Saguntum has become a graveyard of endurance. The streets are empty except for smoke and silence. Roofs have collapsed from bombardment, wells are tainted with ash, and the people, gaunt, hollow-eyed, wrapped in rags, survive on whatever they can find. From the ramparts, you see them still fighting. Men who once traded in olive oil and wine now wield broken spears. Women carry stones to the battlements. Children run messages between burning houses. The city has stopped living and started defying. Hannibal, watching from his command ridge, no longer sees a city. He sees an idea resisting him, and that he cannot abide. He's won sieges before. He's crushed rebellions and scattered armies. But Saguntum refuses to break. It has no army left, no supplies, no chance. And still, it stands. Each morning begins with the same ritual. Trumpets echo through the Carthaginian camp, drums pound, the war elephants bellow. The army moves like a tide toward the walls. Siege towers rumble forward. Slingers let fly a hail of stones that whistle through the air. The defenders respond with desperate precision. Flaming arrows, molten pitch, curses hurled louder than their weapons. The ground between the two armies is a wasteland now. Blackened earth scattered with armour and bones. Even the vultures have grown fat. The air smells of tar, sweat, and something metallic that never fades. Inside the walls, the Council of Saguntum meets by candlelight. The men are thinner now, their eyes sunken, their robes tattered. Alorcus, their leader, stands before them, his voice cracked but steady. "Rome will come," he insists. "They must. They cannot abandon us." But even he doesn't sound sure anymore. A younger captain, blood still on his arm, slams his fist against the table. "We fight alone. The gods have turned away, and so has Rome." An older man whispers, "Then we fight for ourselves." And so they do. That night, Hannibal orders an assault by fire. Pitch-soaked arrows arc into the city, landing with small explosions of flame. Roofs catch. Walls glow red. The Saguntines rush to fight the inferno, throwing buckets of sand and water. But amid the smoke, the Carthaginian miners reach their goal. They've spent weeks tunneling beneath the southern tower. Now, with torches and oil, they set the supports ablaze. A low rumble builds beneath the earth. Then, with a crack like thunder, the wall collapses. Dust and stone explode into the sky. A roar goes up from the Carthaginian camp. The first breach. But Hannibal does not cheer. He knows better than to celebrate early. Through the dust he can see the defenders already swarming to plug the gap, dragging beams, forming human walls, fighting in chaos. They scream their defiance into the smoke, and for a moment even Hannibal hesitates. He can admire courage, even when it's doomed. Still, admiration doesn't stop him. He raises his arm and his signallers blow the horns. Thousands surge forward. The fighting that follows is brutal. The breach becomes a funnel of death. Saguntine warriors hurl down stones, spears, even household furniture. Carthaginian soldiers claw upward, slipping on blood-slick rubble. The clash is so close that shields jam together and blades swing wildly. By nightfall the gap holds, barely. The Carthaginians fall back to regroup, their dead littering the breach. Hannibal paces in silence, his expression carved from stone. His officers wait for orders. Mago speaks first. The city bleeds, but it does not yield. Shall we press again at dawn? Hannibal turns to him slowly. No, we starve them. From that day forward, the siege changes. No more full assaults. Instead, Hannibal tightens the noose. He builds an inner ring of fortifications around Saguntum, a wall around a wall, cutting the city off completely. No messenger can escape, no trader can sneak through. He even orders the river diverted, leaving the wells to dry in the sun. Within weeks, famine sets in. The last stores of grain are gone, horses are slaughtered, dogs vanish from the streets. The people begin boiling leather, grinding old wheat mixed with dirt, anything to survive one more day. And still, Rome does nothing. Word of Saguntum's suffering reaches the Senate, but debate continues. Some argue for diplomacy, others for vengeance. The winter snows delay their decisions. When they finally agree to send envoys, it's already too late. Hannibal's army builds fires at night that illuminate the sky for miles. Inside the city, those flames are all the Saguntines see, bright, mocking, eternal. They light their own torches in response, small stars flickering above the ramparts, one for each family still alive. At dawn, Hannibal walks among his men, silent as always. The soldiers salute him. To them the siege is victory in slow motion. But Hannibal sees beyond that. He sees Rome's pride cracking, the first tremor before a greater war. He turns toward the sea, where the horizon glows with pale light, and whispers to himself, "They think I'm fighting for Spain. They don't yet see I'm fighting for history." And far above him, in the city that refuses to die, the people of Saguntum whisper prayers into the smoke. Prayers not for rescue, but for remembrance. By the 7th month of the siege, Saguntum is no longer a city. It's a scar. Smoke coils from the ruins, drifting across the valley where crops once grew. The streets are silent except for the faint scrape of wind through broken shutters. Dogs no longer bark. The fountains have gone dry. Even the gulls have left the harbour, their cries replaced by the low, weary murmur of the dying. Inside the walls, hunger has become an enemy stronger than Carthage. Families huddle in the shell of the forum, wrapped in tattered cloaks, their faces grey with ash and starvation. The council has stopped meeting. There is nothing left to discuss. The last stores of grain have been rationed and gone, the temple stripped of offerings, the very leather from shields boiled into bitter soup. At the ramparts, the defenders still stand watch, hollow-cheeked, eyes sunk deep, too weak to lift full armour. Yet when the Carthaginian horns sound, they rally anyway, dragging themselves to the battlements, lifting spears that shake in their hands. Pride, that last stubborn flame, still burns. From his command ridge, Hannibal watches through the haze. His engineers have rebuilt their siege towers and sharpened the rams, but he has no need to hurry. He knows the city is dying from the inside. He can wait. Patience is the weapon Rome never learned. His officers urge one final assault, but Hannibal shakes his head. "Not yet," he says quietly. "Let them understand the cost of their alliance." That night, a messenger slips out through the ruins. A young man, barely more than a boy. He crawls through the old aqueduct, slides beneath the Carthaginian lines, and vanishes into the darkness. For 3 days, the city waits. Then he returns, broken and bleeding, with nothing but silence for news. Rome has chosen delay. The Senate sent envoys to Carthage, not soldiers to Spain. Diplomacy moves, as always, slower than mercy. When the people of Saguntum hear this, something breaks. Hope, the invisible thread that held them together, snaps. In the streets, despair turns to fury. Men shout curses at the heavens, women tear their hair, yet even in despair they refuse surrender. The Carthaginian heralds who ride to the walls with offers of mercy are met with arrows. Hannibal respects their defiance, but respect has its limits. He gives the order. The next morning the siege towers roll forward again, not in haste this time, but in ritual. Rams hammer the gates, their rhythm steady as a drumbeat. Catapults thud and crack, sending stones the size of oxen hurtling into the walls. Fire arrows arc through the sky, their trails glowing like comets. Saguntum answers as best it can. Archers shoot from towers already crumbling. Slingers loose stones with trembling arms. One tower collapses with a roar, crushing both defender and attacker. The air fills with the roar of flame and the clang of metal. Hannibal rides closer to the front, his horse spattered with dust. He doesn't shout orders. He simply watches. His face is unreadable, a mixture of pride, pity, and something colder, inevitability. At midday, a section of wall gives way entirely. The Carthaginians surge forward, their shields raised, spears thrusting. The defenders fight like cornered wolves. Street by street, house by house, they resist. Women throw roof tiles, old men stab with kitchen knives, but the end is written. By evening, the Carthaginians hold half the city. Fires burn unchecked. The Temple of Hercules collapses in a burst of sparks, its marble altar cracking in the heat. The defenders fall back to the Acropolis, their last refuge, their last breath. Hannibal halts the attack at dusk. He knows they'll fight harder if cornered. He wants the night to do his work for him. Hunger, fear, exhaustion. In the darkness, Saguntum survivors gather atop the Acropolis. They light torches not to see, but to choose. A few speak of surrender. Most shout them down. One elder stands before the crowd, voice trembling but fierce. Rome will forget us, he says, but the gods will not. Let our names be written in fire, and so they decide. At dawn, Hannibal's soldiers prepare for the final push. But before the horns sound, a strange light flickers above the walls. Small at first, then brighter. Smoke billows. Then the truth becomes clear. The Saguntines are burning their own city. The fire spreads fast. Roofs collapse, towers crumble, the sky turns red. Through the smoke you can hear the cries, not of terror but of defiance. Families embrace in the glow. Warriors throw themselves into the flames rather than yield. Hannibal lowers his spear. He does not order the charge. There's nothing left to conquer. By midday, the city is an inferno. The flames climb high enough to be seen from the sea. The heat is unbearable even from the Carthaginian lines. When the smoke finally begins to thin, Saguntum is gone. Blackened stones, twisted bronze, the skeleton of a dream. Hannibal rides forward alone, his horse's hooves crunching on ashes. He dismounts and stands in the centre of the ruins. Around him the wind hisses softly through the embers. He looks toward the horizon, toward Italy, toward Rome. It begins, he whispers, and with that he mounts again and rides away, leaving behind a dead city and a living legend. The fires of Saguntum burn for 3 days and 3 nights. When the smoke finally clears, nothing remains but silence and ash. The once golden Acropolis, the temples, the marble streets, all reduced to rubble. The city that had defied Hannibal, the city that had trusted Rome, is gone. The air smells of charred cedar and salt, a bitter perfume that lingers over the ruins. Hannibal walks through the wreckage at dawn. His men follow at a respectful distance. The sound of their footsteps is muffled by soot. A few Carthaginian soldiers murmur prayers. Even hardened veterans are unsettled by what they see. The Saguntines, it seems, have denied Hannibal even the satisfaction of conquest. They chose their own ending. At the top of the Acropolis, the altar of Hercules still smokes. Around it lie the ashes of those who gathered there in the city's final hours. Men, women, children, the old and the young, their weapons melted, their jewellery fused into lumps of bronze. The stone beneath Hannibal's feet is scorched black. He stops beside the altar, staring into the embers. "They burned everything," his lieutenant Mago says quietly. "They burned themselves," Hannibal replies. His voice carries no triumph, only understanding. They wanted to prove that Rome's promises were worth dying for. Now Rome must decide if they were worth avenging. It's a strange moment, a conqueror standing amid ruin, knowing that his victory has already outgrown him. For Saguntum's fall is more than an ending, it's a beginning. In the days that follow, Hannibal allows his men to rest. The city is looted, not out of cruelty but necessity. Gold and silver are gathered for the treasury. Surviving slaves are rounded up, though there are few. Most of the citizens, true to their oath, perished in the flames. Even the Carthaginian soldiers grow quiet, uneasy with the task of stripping the dead. When the work is done, Hannibal summons his officers. They gather in the shadow of the ruined gate where the last fragments of Saguntum's wall still stand. "We are finished here," he says. "Spain is ours." But Spain is not the prize. He turns his eyes north, toward the invisible horizon beyond the mountains. "Rome will come for us now, or we will go to her." The men murmur in awe. They've fought for gold, for land, for survival. But this is something larger. They see in their commander's face not greed, but destiny. The oath he swore as a boy burns still behind his eyes. In Carthage, word of Saguntum's fall arrives weeks later. The Senate receives it with a mixture of shock and fear. Some senators praise Hannibal's courage, others curse his defiance. "He has doomed us," one elder whispers. "Rome will never forgive this." But in truth, Hannibal has forced their hand. Carthage can no longer retreat without dishonour. And in Rome, when the messengers arrive, the Senate chambers erupt. The envoys who had been sent to Carthage return empty-handed, their words unheeded. Now they bring news of Saguntum's destruction, of Rome's ally erased from the map. Senators shout over one another, red-faced with fury. The older statesmen call for restraint, investigation. The younger ones, hot-blooded men like Publius Cornelius Scipio, demand vengeance. One voice rises above the rest. Delenda est Carthago. Carthage must be destroyed. But Rome does not yet declare war, not officially. The Republic is cautious, bound by laws and rituals. The Senate sends one final delegation to Carthage, led by Quintus Fabius, a man known for his patience and steel. When he arrives, he confronts the Carthaginian council in their great hall, his toga immaculate, his face like marble. He demands that Hannibal be handed over for punishment. The Carthaginians refuse. Hannibal acted in the defence of Carthage's interests, they say. He has done no wrong. Fabius's face hardens. Slowly he gathers a fold of his toga in his hand, as if holding something invisible. "In this fold," he declares, "I carry peace or war." Choose the council hesitates. Then their leader Hanno replies, "You choose." Fabius lets the cloth fall. "Then we have war." And with those words, history pivots. Back in Spain, Hannibal receives the news with a quiet smile. He knew it was coming. He had always known. To him, Saguntum was the opening move in a grand game, a message written in fire and ash. Now, the world has read it. He gathers his generals. On a map spread across a rough wooden table, he traces his finger along a path, from New Carthage through the Pyrenees, across Gaul, over the Alps, into the heart of Italy. His officers exchange wary glances. "The Alps are death," one mutters. Hannibal answers, "So is Rome." Outside the tent, the wind howls through the ruins of Saguntum. The fire is gone, but the smoke still lingers, drifting north, as if carried toward its next destination. The world is about to change, because one man, standing amid the ashes of a city, has just declared war on an empire. The ruins of Saguntum fade behind him, but the fire he lit there burns brighter in his mind. Hannibal rides north with the spring wind on his face, the banners of Carthage snapping behind him. His army moves like a dark river through Iberia, 30,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 elephants. The same beast that once terrified Saguntum will soon cross mountains no elephant was ever meant to see. But for now, Hannibal's goal is simple. Prepare for Rome's wrath. He knows the Republic cannot ignore him now. Saguntum's fall is an open wound on Roman honour. He has struck first, deliberately, and he knows the next blows will come fast. The question is where and when. At every camp along the march, he drills his men. The Carthaginian veterans are disciplined, hardened from years of Iberian warfare. The Iberian tribes fight with passion but need order. Hannibal gives them both. He divides his forces, organises supply trains, gathers guides. To his officers, it looks like routine preparation, but Hannibal's thoughts are already across the sea, in Italy, in the shadow of Rome's 7 hills. Each night he studies maps by lamplight. His finger traces the route north, the Ebro River, the Pyrenees, the Rhône, and finally the Alps. "We will strike them where they think themselves untouchable," he says quietly to his brother Mago. "They brought war to our home once. Now we bring it to theirs." Word of his march spreads like wildfire. Iberian chieftains come to swear allegiance, or to beg him to stay. They've seen enough war to know that when giants fight, the ground breaks beneath everyone. Hannibal listens to them all but bends to none. Spain is no longer the frontier, he tells them. The war is not here. The war is everywhere. Rome thinks itself safe. In New Carthage, the great port city he made his capital, preparations move at fever pitch. Shipwrights repair galleys, blacksmiths forge new weapons, engineers build supply carts. But even as the city hums with war, Hannibal himself remains detached, calm, deliberate, like a man performing an ancient ritual he's practiced since childhood. And in a way, he has. He was 9 years old when his father, Hannibal Barca, took him by the hand to the altar of Baal Hammon before sailing for Spain. "Swear," his father told him, "that you will never be a friend to Rome." The boy placed his small hand on the fire-warmed stone and swore it. That oath has guided every step of his life since, through victory, through exile, through the ruins of Saguntum. Now standing at the height of his power, he means to fulfill it. Yet even Hannibal cannot ignore the practicalities of empire. As his army marches north, he must secure his base in Spain. His brother Hasdrubal will stay behind to govern and guard the territory, holding Carthage's new Spanish heartland while Hannibal strikes westward. Their farewell is brief. 2 brothers bound by purpose rather than sentiment. "Hold the south," Hannibal says. "I'll make the north burn." Meanwhile, in Rome, the Senate meets in crisis. Word of Saguntum's destruction has transformed outrage into resolve. "He must be stopped before he crosses the Ebro," declares one senator. "No, crush Carthage itself," argues another. But amid the shouting, a quieter plan takes shape. The Republic will send armies both east and west, one to Spain to confront Hannibal, another to Africa to threaten Carthage's home. The Roman legions begin to muster, disciplined, methodical, confident. They have beaten Carthage before, they will do so again. The senators still underestimate the man who commands their enemy. To them, Hannibal is reckless, young, impulsive. They have not yet learned that his patience is as deadly as his rage. Back in Iberia, the tribes whisper about omens. A comet streaks across the sky. The local priests speak of storms brewing beyond the mountains. Hannibal, ever the realist, ignores them. He trusts in logistics, not prophecies. Yet even he can feel the weight of what's coming. The sense that the gods are watching closely now. He rides along the Ebro's bank one morning, his horse's hooves splashing through shallow water. The river glints red with sunrise. Behind him, his officers discuss supply lines, recruitment, coinage, the dull machinery of war. But Hannibal isn't listening. His gaze is fixed northward, toward the land that Rome calls its own. He imagines the legions waiting, the arrogance in their eyes, the disbelief when they see his army rise out of the mists of the Alps. "Let them come," he murmurs. "Let them think me bound by the sea." They'll learn that mountains can burn by summer's end. The preparations are complete. New Carthage hums with farewell drums and the crackle of torches. The fleet is secured, the supplies loaded, the soldiers ready. Hannibal stands at the edge of the harbour, looking not at the ships, but at the horizon. The Romans built their empire by daring the impossible, he says softly. Now they will see it done better. The ashes of Saguntum still cling to his sandals, a reminder of how it began. A city that trusted treaties and died for them. Rome calls it tragedy, Hannibal calls it justice. He mounts his horse and rides toward the northern road, where the banners of Carthage ripple like blood in the wind. His officers follow, the elephants lumbering behind in solemn procession. Somewhere beyond those distant mountains, the fate of the ancient world waits, and with the first turn of the wheel, the long road to Rome begins. The summer of 218 BCE bleeds heat and dust across Iberia. Hannibal's army winds north through the rugged passes of the Ebro Valley, banners fluttering crimson against a pale, pitiless sky. Every mile of this march feels like a drumbeat, slow, inevitable, the sound of history crossing its threshold. The men have begun to whisper now. They know what their commander intends. He's not content to hold Spain. He means to carry the war into Italy itself, to strike the Romans in their own heartland, something no foreign army has ever dared. Even among the veterans there's unease. The Alps are legend, a wall of ice and death. No army crosses and lives, they mutter. Hannibal hears it, but says nothing. Fear, he knows, is a weapon, one he must wield, not destroy. Before him lies the Ebro River, wide and strong, marking the invisible line between Carthage's influence and Rome's claimed protectorates. It's a boundary agreed upon in treaties long broken. Crossing it will mean war, open and absolute. Hannibal dismounts on the southern bank. Around him, his officers wait in silence. He stands for a long time, looking at the water, the reflection of the sky rippling across its surface. Then, with deliberate calm, he steps into the river. The water reaches his knees, then his waist. He looks back once, his eyes hard as stone. This, he says, is the first step toward Rome. Behind him, thousands of men follow, African veterans in bronze, Iberian spearmen in red-dyed tunics, Balearic slingers with leather pouches at their sides. The elephants wade last, trumpeting, the current swirling around their legs. The sound rolls like thunder through the valley. When they reach the far bank, Hannibal turns to his standard-bearer. "Plant the eagle," he orders. The Carthaginian flag goes up, flapping in the wind. The men cheer, not wildly, but with the low, steady sound of faith renewed. The war has begun. News of the crossing travels fast. Roman merchants in Massilia, modern Marseille, report sightings of the Carthaginian host. Scouts bring word to the Senate. Hannibal has crossed the Ebro with an army. Panic flickers behind marble facades. 2 Roman consuls, Publius Cornelius Scipio and Tiberius Sempronius Longus, are ordered to mobilize at once. Scipio to confront Hannibal in Spain, Sempronius to prepare a fleet for Africa. But Hannibal's speed outpaces Roman planning. Before Scipio's legions can even leave Italy, Hannibal has already reached the Pyrenees. The mountains loom ahead, jagged, grey, eternal. His engineers cut roads through the foothills, building bridges, calming tribes with promises or crushing them with force. A few resist, most fall into line. The march continues. Along the way, Hannibal meets with local chieftains. He's not just a soldier, he's a diplomat, a linguist, a chameleon. He speaks to them in their own tongue, offering gold, alliances, independence, whatever binds them to his cause. Roman slaves, he tells them, I offer freedom. It's not entirely true, but it works. By the time he reaches the northern slopes, his army has swelled again with Gallic volunteers. The crossing of the Pyrenees is brutal. Narrow passes, rock slides, sudden ambushes. Hannibal loses men to cold, exhaustion, and treachery. A mutiny even breaks out among some of his Iberian soldiers, unwilling to march farther from home. Hannibal deals with it swiftly. He gathers the ringleaders, listens to their complaints, then dismisses them, sending them home alive. Go, he tells them, but remember that you walk away from glory. The rest of the army stays, shamed into silence. By autumn, the army descends into Gaul. Here the land opens, forests, rivers, endless plains. The tribes of southern Gaul, still bitter from Rome's expansion, welcome him cautiously. Others, allied to Rome, raise the alarm. Hannibal ignores both. He moves like a shadow, bypassing strongholds, striking only when necessary. His march is as much psychological as military, a demonstration of inevitability. Meanwhile, in Rome, confusion reigns. Scipio sails for Spain but finds no enemy. He lands at Emporion, only to learn that Hannibal has already crossed the Pyrenees and vanished into Gaul. The realization hits him like a blade. The war has begun on the wrong side of the map. He turns his ships north, racing home to defend Italy, but Hannibal is already ahead. Near the Rhone River, his vanguard clashes with Gallic allies of Rome. It's a brief, vicious skirmish, a test. The Carthaginians win, driving the enemy back across the river. Hannibal wastes no time. He orders rafts built for the elephants, massive contraptions of timber and rope coated with clay and pitch. The beasts balk at first, trumpeting in fear, but their handlers guide them forward with shouts and prods. The river swirls around them, a torrent of mud and foam. One elephant panics and sinks, dragging two handlers down with it. The others make it across. On the opposite bank, Hannibal kneels, scoops up a handful of mud and lets it drip through his fingers. Rome will send armies, fleets, excuses, he says softly, but they will never send enough. His officers glance uneasily at the horizon. Beyond the Rhone lies the Alps, a jagged wall of snow-capped death. They've heard the stories, storms that swallow men whole, avalanches that bury legions. Mago finally speaks what all are thinking. No one can cross them with an army. Hannibal looks up, the faintest smile on his lips. Then no one but us will. Behind him, the setting sun bleeds red across the river. Ahead, the mountains stand cold and eternal. Between them stretches the road to Rome, a road paved not with stone but with audacity. And somewhere, far across the sea, the Senate in Rome still believes the war will be fought in Spain. They have no idea what's coming. Autumn grips Gaul in a grey, bone-cold chill. Hannibal's army, weary but unbroken, pushes north along the Rhone valley, the mountains looming closer with every step. The peaks pierce the clouds like white knives glittering in the distance. To most men, they look like the edge of the world. To Hannibal, they look like a challenge the gods themselves have left behind. The Carthaginian army is enormous but fragile now. 37 elephants, 20,000 infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and a caravan of thousands more carrying food, tools, and siege equipment. The march through Gaul has bled them, yet the general drives them on with that same quiet, merciless confidence. In the villages they pass, Gauls emerge from the forest to stare. Some throw flowers, others curses. Hannibal's scouts bring warnings. Tribes ahead are rallying, ready to ambush him in the mountain passes. His officers urge delay, to rest, to wait for spring. But Hannibal shakes his head. If I stop, the fear will grow faster than our supplies. We climb now, while the gods still favour us. And so, in early November, 218 BCE, Hannibal leads his army toward the Alps. The first descent begins at dawn. Frost crunches underfoot, the wind sharp as glass. The lower slopes are forested, golden with dying leaves, but soon the trees thin, replaced by rock and snow. The men march single file, their breaths visible, their sandals slipping on ice. The elephants lumber behind, snorting clouds of vapour, their handlers singing to calm them. The first few days are hell, ambushes from unseen ridges, rocks tumbling from above, mountain tribes attacking from the shadows. Hannibal rides to the front, shouting orders. His voice cuts through the wind, steady and sharp. He leads counterattacks himself, his cloak torn, his face streaked with dirt. In one skirmish, a spear grazes his cheek. He doesn't flinch. They fight like wolves, he says of the tribes, so we'll answer like fire. The army presses on, climbing higher each day. The path narrows to a strip of rock above bottomless ravines. One misstep means death. Mules slip, carts break, elephants scream as they lose footing. Soldiers tether ropes to one another, dragging supplies across gaps barely wider than a man's shoulders. Snow begins to fall, light at first, then heavy. By the 5th day, they reach the upper passes. The temperature plummets. Fires won't catch. The men's armour freezes to their bodies. They huddle in groups for warmth. their breath forming clouds in the darkness. Some freeze where they sit, others vanish in the blizzards. The dead are left where they fall, and yet even here Hannibal walks among them, cloak-wrapped tight, his presence the only warmth left. He speaks to the men by torchlight, his voice low, patient, relentless. "You think these mountains are gods?" he asks. "They are not. They are only stone. Stone can be crossed, broken, conquered. Rome thinks herself eternal, but she is only another mountain." When dawn comes, the storm eases. They climb the last ridge and finally emerge onto a high plateau. From here, the view is endless, the snow stretching in every direction, and far below, the green valleys of Italy glowing faintly in the distance. Hannibal points to them. "There," he says, "there is the enemy's home. You have suffered for days. Rome will suffer for years. The men cheer, but it's a hollow sound, carried away by the wind. They've lost thousands already, and the descent will claim more. Still, something in that view rekindles their strength. They begin the descent. If the climb was torment, the descent is nightmare. The snow turns to slush, hiding crevices that swallow men whole. Avalanches thunder from the peaks. In one narrow pass, a section of trail collapses beneath the elephants, sending several tumbling to their deaths. The survivors panic, trumpeting wildly, and it takes all the handlers' skill to calm them. Hannibal orders the engineers to carve a new path through the rock, heating the stone with fire, then shattering it with vinegar and hammers. It takes 3 days, but they do it. When they finally reach the foothills, the survivors are barely more than shadows. Of the 50,000 who left Spain, fewer than half remain. The elephants, caked in ice, move slowly like ghosts from another age. But Hannibal is alive. His army still breathes, and beyond the last ridge the fertile plains of northern Italy stretch before them. He has done what no one thought possible, crossed the Alps with an army. At the first sight of open land, the soldiers fall to their knees. Some laugh, others weep. Hannibal lets them rest for 1 day only. "Rome will not wait," he says. "We march tomorrow." Word spreads like wildfire through Italy. Villages whisper the impossible truth. A foreign army has descended from the Alps. The Senate refuses to believe it at first, until scouts confirm it. Then panic strikes. "He's here!" one senator cries. "In Italy?" Yes, Hannibal Barca, the man who burned Saguntum, who defied treaties, who outwitted nature itself, has entered the heart of the Roman Republic. And as his soldiers light their campfires on the plain, their flames reflected in the eyes of their elephants, Hannibal looks south toward the invisible walls of Rome and murmurs, "They will remember Saguntum." The war has arrived. The valley below the Alps opens wide, green fields, winding rivers, and the faint shimmer of Italy's northern plains. The men who survive the crossing stumble forward, blinking in disbelief. They have walked out of the jaws of death. The wind here smells of grass, not snow, of life, not silence. Hannibal stands at the edge of a ridge, his cloak whipping in the breeze, and for the first time in months he allows himself a slow, steady breath. Behind him, the remnants of his army gather, scarred, frost-bitten, half-starved, but alive. They've lost almost half their number, yet what remains is iron. They've endured fire, famine, ambush, and ice, and they still march. No general could ask for better soldiers. The descent into the Po Valley is a revelation. The locals, Gauls and Ligurians, just stare as the Carthaginian columns wind through their villages. Africans in bronze armour, Iberians with scarred faces, and above all elephants, towering and spectral, their hides grey with frost. To the villagers, they look like spirits from another world. At first, fear keeps them distant, but soon emissaries arrive. The tribes of the Po hate Rome almost as much as Hannibal does. For years the Republic has taxed them, taken their land, forced their sons into wars that were never theirs. Now, at last, someone offers them revenge. Hannibal meets with their chieftains, drinking their wine, speaking in their dialects, promising freedom. "Rome calls you allies," he tells them. "I call you brothers." It works. One by one, the tribes join him, Insubres, Boii, Cenomani. They bring supplies, fresh horses, guides who know the rivers and roads. Hannibal's army grows again. Rome, meanwhile, scrambles to react. The Senate's plans are in ruins. They expected the war in Spain, not Italy. Consul Publius Scipio, returning from his aborted expedition, lands in Pisa only to find Hannibal already marching through the north. The shock is total. Rome has faced foreign invaders before, Samnites Gauls, even Pyrrhus of Epirus. But never like this. This is a new kind of enemy. Strategic, relentless, unafraid. Scipio rushes north to intercept him. The two armies meet near the river Ticinus, a tributary of the Po. It's a small clash, mostly cavalry, but it marks the first direct encounter between Hannibal and Rome. The Carthaginian scouts spot the Romans first. Hannibal sends his Numidian horsemen forward, swift riders from the African deserts, their curved blades flashing. They circle the Roman cavalry like wolves around cattle. Scipio leads his men personally, charging into the melee. For a moment the Romans hold, but then Hannibal's second wave crashes in. Heavier cavalry striking from the flank. The Romans break. Scipio himself is wounded, a spear thrust through his thigh, and would have been killed if not for the courage of his young son, Publius Cornelius Scipio Jr., who rides through the chaos, lifts his father onto his own horse, and drags him to safety. The boy is only 17. One day, the world will know his name as Scipio Africanus, the man destined to end Hannibal's war. But for now, he's just a son saving his father from the fire Hannibal has lit. The victory at Ticinus is small but symbolic. It tells Italy, and Rome, that Hannibal is not a raider or a rumour. He is here, real and unstoppable. The Carthaginian army moves east toward the Trebia River, gathering more Gallic allies as it goes. Hannibal's officers marvel at his endurance. He seems to never sleep. He rides ahead at dawn, inspects supply trains at dusk, and spends the nights planning the next strike. When asked if he ever doubts, he replies simply, "Doubt is for those who can turn back." Winter settles on the plains, wet, cold, and cruel. The Romans, under Scipio and the newly arrived consul Sempronius Longus, set up camp across the Trebia. Between them and Hannibal lies a swollen river, icy and fast. Both sides spend weeks watching each other, testing the edges, waiting for the moment to strike. Hannibal strikes first. At dawn, one freezing morning, he sends his Numidian cavalry to harass the Roman lines, feigning retreat. Sempronius, eager for glory and impatient to avenge Saguntum, takes the bait. He orders his men to pursue. The Roman legions wade through the icy water, their armour heavy, their limbs numbed by the cold. On the far bank, Hannibal waits. When the Romans reach the centre of the field, the trap springs. Hidden in the reeds along the riverbank, Hannibal's brother Mago unleashes 2,000 men. They surge behind the Romans as Hannibal's main force charges from the front. The battlefield dissolves into chaos, cavalry smashing into infantry, elephants trampling lines of legionaries, horns blaring, men shouting in Latin, Punic, and a dozen other tongues. The Trebia runs red. By sunset, the Roman army's broken. Thousands lie dead or captured. Sempronius retreats with a fraction of his men. Hannibal surveys the field from horseback, his cloak spattered with mud. "They fight well," he murmurs. "They will make this war worthy." The message to Rome is unmistakable. Saguntum wasn't an accident. The Alps weren't a miracle. This is strategy, vengeance, inevitability. And in the flickering campfires that night, the soldiers whisper that their general has the favour of the gods. Far to the south, in the marble halls of the Senate, those same whispers twist into fear. Rome, for the first time in centuries, begins to understand what it means to be hunted. Winter in northern Italy bites hard. The fields around the Trebia are slick with mud and frozen blood, the river swollen and cruel. The few surviving Romans limp south, frost clinging to their cloaks, their pride colder than the air itself. Behind them, the smoke of Hannibal's victory still rises, black columns against a grey sky. In Rome, the news hits like a hammer. The Senate chambers erupt in outrage and disbelief. "How can he be in Italy?" one senator shouts. "He crossed the Alps. Impossible." But the reports keep coming. The fall of Saguntum, the march through Gaul, the victory at Trebia. The impossible has already happened. Panic ripples through the Republic. The people demand answers. Priests consult omens, generals swear new oaths. The Senate calls for more legions, new armies raised in haste, their recruits barely trained. Rome is powerful, yes, but it's also proud. And pride, Hannibal knows, is the easiest weapon to turn against an enemy. Meanwhile, the Carthaginian camp is alive with celebration. The Gauls feast, drinking from captured Roman helmets. Drums echo through the night. The elephants, tethered at the camp's edge, rumble low, restless in the cold. Hannibal sits apart from the noise, a small fire flickering before him. He watches the flames, his face unreadable. Victory sits heavy on his shoulders. He has broken a Roman army, he has humiliated a consul, but he knows this is only the beginning. Rome will not surrender. Rome will come again, stronger, angrier, relentless. The next move must be his. When spring comes, Hannibal leads his army south through the Apennine Mountains. The passes are treacherous, steep cliffs, sudden floods, but compared to the Alps, they are nothing. He moves fast, avoiding towns, striking where least expected. His men live off the land, foraging grain, hunting wild game, taking what they need. The Gauls, now bound to him by victory and spoils, guide him through their territory. Yet the march is brutal. Rain soaks the plains for weeks. Rivers overflow, drowning the roads. At one point the army wades through waist-deep water for miles, their armour dragging them down. Men collapse in the mud. Horses die in harness. Even Hannibal himself suffers. His right eye becomes infected after days in the marshes. He refuses to stop. He rides blind for weeks, wrapped in bandages, issuing orders by sound and instinct. When the infection finally clears, the eye is gone. From then on, every Roman who sees him will remember that gaze, one eye burning like fire, the other an empty scar. By early summer, Hannibal reaches the plains near the river Arno. Ahead lies Etruria, Roman heartland. The cities tremble at his approach. Some surrender outright, others resist and are burned. He does not slaughter without reason, but he makes examples. Let them know, he tells his officers, that Rome cannot protect them. The Senate sends out another army under the consul Gaius Flaminius. Bold, rash, loved by the people, hated by his peers. He's eager to avenge the humiliation at Trebia. When word reaches him that Hannibal is marching along Lake Trasimene, he seizes the chance. The Roman army advances along the northern shore. Narrow road to the left, steep hills to the right, fog thick as milk rising from the lake. It's perfect terrain for an ambush. Hannibal's scouts have already marked it. During the night, he hides his forces in 3 layers along the slopes, infantry high above, cavalry on the flanks, and light troops near the road. At dawn, the fog deepens and the trap closes. The first Roman ranks never see it coming. Horns sound from every direction. 1, 2, 3. Then the roar of 10,000 voices. Javelins rain down, horses scream, the hills erupt in chaos. The Romans, pinned between the lake and the mountains, have nowhere to go. The mist turns red with blood. Flaminius tries to rally his men, but it's hopeless. He's cut down in the melee, trampled underfoot. For hours the slaughter continues. When the fog finally lifts, the water of Lake Trasimene glows crimson. 15,000 Romans are dead. It is the single greatest ambush in Roman history. When news reaches the city, mourning turns to terror. Bells toll for days. The Senate declares a religious fast, sacrifices to the gods, desperate to know what divine wrath they've earned. Is Hannibal a man? One senator mutters. Or a curse sent by the gods? Meanwhile, Hannibal moves on. He does not march on Rome. Not yet. He knows the city's walls are strong and its people stubborn. Instead, he marches through the countryside, burning, plundering, breaking Rome's spirit piece by piece. The villages that resist are erased. The ones that surrender are spared, given freedom and Carthaginian friendship. Rome protects no one, he tells them. Choose a master who remembers your name. And many do. In 1 year, Hannibal has destroyed 2 Roman armies and shaken the foundations of the Republic. Yet the man himself remains calm. In his tent, by the light of a single lamp, he studies maps, moving tiny wooden figures across them. The Alps, the rivers, the roads. always southward, always closer. He has turned the world's mightiest republic into prey. And somewhere, deep in the marble heart of Rome, the Senate finally understands what Saguntum's ashes were trying to say, that the fire they ignored has now reached their door. Rome is in shock. For centuries the Republic has claimed invincibility, its legions unbeaten on land or sea. But in the span of 2 years, one man, Hannibal Barca, has shattered that illusion. Saguntum burned, Trebia bled, Trasimene drowned. The names alone hang over the Senate like ghosts. The city itself feels it. The people whisper his name as if it were a storm. Mothers hush their children with it. Merchants close early, fearing rumours of another defeat. The air smells of incense and fear. Temples crowded with offerings, priests chanting night and day. The Senate meets in near-constant session, their once proud debates reduced to arguments of desperation. Some senators demand negotiation, others cry for blood. But among them rises one voice of calm. Quintus Fabius Maximus, an older man, slow-spoken, thoughtful. The Romans nickname him Cunctator, the delayer. He proposes a radical idea. Do not meet Hannibal in battle, he says. Shadow him. Starve him. Let him fight ghosts and hunger instead of legions. At first, the suggestion sounds cowardly, even sacrilegious. Rome does not delay. Rome does not hide. But after Trasimene, there is no choice. The Senate reluctantly grants Fabius near-dictatorial powers. The fate of the Republic now rests on his patience. While Rome licks its wounds, Hannibal marches south through the Apennines, deeper into Italy than any enemy since the Gauls. He doesn't strike cities yet, not the fortified ones. He targets the heart instead, the land. His army moves like a living wildfire, burning fields, slaughtering livestock, cutting supply lines. Every plume of smoke in the distance is another Roman family ruined, another farmer swearing vengeance. Yet Hannibal's discipline is remarkable. He forbids looting without permission. He protects towns that surrender, treating their people with courtesy. To those who resist, however, his wrath is total. Fabius follows, always behind, never too close. He keeps his army safe on high ground, shadowing Hannibal's movements, cutting off food sources, harassing foragers. Every night his campfires burn on distant ridges, visible but unreachable. Hannibal knows the game and smiles. They've found a Roman with patience, he says to Mago. It won't last. The months drag on. Hannibal raids, Fabius restrains. Rome grows restless. The people mock their cautious commander, calling him the schoolmaster of Hannibal. Young officers sneer that the Republic has grown soft. Better to die like Flaminius than hide like Fabius, they say. But Fabius endures the insults. He knows time is on his side. He avoids open battle, waiting for Hannibal's long supply lines and foreign allies to falter. Hannibal, for his part, grows cunning. He begins sending false messages, staging feints, laying traps not for armies but for patience itself. When Fabius blocks him near the town of Falernum, Hannibal pretends to be cornered. At night he orders his men to tie burning torches to the horns of 2,000 oxen. When the Romans see the lights moving across the hills, they assume it's a retreat and reposition to intercept, only to realize too late they've been tricked. Hannibal's army slips through the valley under cover of darkness, as silent as smoke. It's a masterclass in deception. The next morning Fabius stands on the ridge watching the last Carthaginian banners vanish into the mist. He doesn't rage or curse. He simply nods. He has teeth, he says quietly. Good. So do we. The stalemate continues. Hannibal can't draw Fabius into a fight. Fabius can't corner Hannibal. The war becomes one of endurance to who breaks first. For all his genius, Hannibal's position grows fragile. He's deep in enemy territory, surrounded by hostile cities, his supplies running thin. His army feeds off the land, but the land itself is being stripped bare. In his tent he studies the map again. If we cannot make Rome fall, he says, we will make Italy stop believing in her. He sends messengers to southern cities, Capua, Tarentum, Apulia, promising independence, gold, and vengeance against Rome. Slowly the cracks begin to show. Some cities waver, others secretly open their gates to him. Rome's allies, long the backbone of its power, begin to question their loyalty. Hannibal's strategy isn't just conquest, it's contagion. In the autumn of 217 BCE, a new Roman command takes over. The Senate, frustrated with Fabius's patience, appoints two new consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. Together they command 8 legions, the largest army Rome has ever fielded, nearly 80,000 men. Their orders are clear: find Hannibal and end this. The two men could not be more different. Paulus is cautious, deliberate, another Fabius at heart. Varro is reckless, hungry for glory. Hannibal knows their temperaments well. He watches their march south and smiles. Two generals sharing one army, he says, I will defeat the one who commands tomorrow. The armies meet near the village of Cannae, on the dusty plains of Apulia. It's late summer, 216 BCE. The field is wide and open, perfect for manoeuvre, perfect for destruction. Hannibal's scouts report the Roman numbers, double his own. He doesn't flinch. Then there are more to kill, he says. His men begin to form ranks. The elephants are gone now, dead in the Alps or in battle. What remains is lean and lethal. Iberian swordsmen, African spearmen, Numidian cavalry, veterans of every campaign since Saguntum. They trust their general absolutely. Across the field, Rome's massive army assembles, rows upon rows of red-crested helmets gleaming in the sun. Drums thunder, standards rise. The dust begins to stir between them. Hannibal raises his arm. When they push, he says softly, we pull. The trap is set, and as the sun rises over Cannae, the fate of two empires balances on the edge of one man's strategy. The morning of August 2nd, 216 BCE, dawns hot and dry over the plains of Cannae. The air is still, heavy with dust and tension. To the east, the faint shimmer of the Adriatic catches the light. To the west, the Roman legions stretch in perfect, terrible order. 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, an ocean of steel and scarlet under the burning sun. Facing them, Hannibal's army, barely half their number, waits in silence. His soldiers stand in a crescent formation, Gauls and Iberians in the centre, African veterans on either wing, Numidian horsemen hovering at the flanks like vultures waiting for the feast. From a distance it looks like a defensive stance. The centre bowed, inviting attack. But Hannibal's men know better. This is not retreat. This is a trap built from geometry and nerve. Across the field, the two Roman consuls argue. Paulus, the cautious one, wants to delay, to rest, to test Hannibal's position. Varro, bold and impatient, commands the army today, and he wants blood. We are Romans, he shouts. We crush our enemies by weight, not waiting. The legions roar in agreement. Hannibal watches from horseback, one hand resting lightly on the reins. His one good eye squints against the glare. His scarred one, blind but gleaming, makes him seem almost inhuman. He knows exactly how the Romans will fight. Dense, disciplined, unbending. And that's precisely what he's counting on. He rides along his lines, his voice carrying over the wind. They think themselves gods. Today, we remind them they bleed. The horns sound. The Roman advance begins, a vast rumbling tide of shields and sandals. Dust rises in choking clouds. The centre of Hannibal's line meets them head-on, the Gauls and Iberians bracing their shields, shouting in defiance. The impact is thunder. Spears snap, swords clash, men vanish beneath the crush of bodies. At first, it goes as Rome planned. Their superior numbers drive the Carthaginian centre backward, step by step. Hannibal's line bends, forming a shallow arc. To the Roman officers, it looks like victory. The enemy giving ground, breaking under pressure. Press them, Varro bellows, break the line! But as the Romans surge forward, they tighten their formation, too tight. Their flanks compress. Their front pushes deeper into the curved Carthaginian line. What they don't see is that Hannibal's wings, the African infantry on either side, have begun to pivot inward. The trap is closing. Hannibal rides behind his line, shouting orders, His Africans, disciplined and patient, hold position until the precise moment the Romans are fully inside the crescent. Then, with a single signal, a raised spear glinting in the sunlight, they move. The wings sweep inward like gates slamming shut. Suddenly the Romans find themselves surrounded on 3 sides, and then 4, as the Numidian cavalry swings behind them to cut off retreat. The vast, disciplined Roman army, the pride of the Republic, is trapped in its own momentum. At first, confusion, then horror. The fighting collapses into chaos. The Romans can't maneuver, can't even raise their weapons properly. Men are crushed together so tightly they can barely breathe. The Carthaginian blades slash from every direction, front, side, back. The Gauls in the centre, once retreating, now push forward again, screaming as they drive their swords into the packed Roman mass. Hannibal's command rings out over the din, no mercy. Close the ring, the killing lasts for hours. By midday the sun stands high, baking the battlefield. The smell is unbearable. Blood, sweat, dust, and death. Roman trumpets fall silent. Their commanders are either dead or lost in the carnage. Paeolus, the cautious consul, fights to the last, dying surrounded by his guards. Varro escapes with a handful of cavalry, the only fragment of the greatest army Rome ever raised. When the noise finally fades, the plain of Cannae is silent except for the corps of carrion birds. The ground is carpeted with corpses, nearly 50,000 Romans dead, another 10,000 captured. It is not just a defeat, it is annihilation. Hannibal walks among the fallen as dusk settles. His soldiers part before him, silent, awed. He stops beside a cluster of Roman standard, golden eagles lying face down in the dust. Slowly he kneels, presses his hand to one and whispers, "For Saguntum." The survivors call it the darkest day in Roman history. In the city itself, panic explodes. The gates are shut, mourning bells toll through the night. Families crowd the temples, begging for sons who will never return. The Senate orders all public mourning limited to 30 days, not out of cruelty, but to keep the Republic from collapsing into despair. And yet, amid the horror, Rome does not break. The city that has survived fires, sieges, and kings refuses to die. Even as the streets echo with grief, new legions begin to form. Boys barely old enough to shave take oaths beside men old enough to be their grandfathers. The Republic still stands, bleeding, but alive. Hannibal knows this. He stands on a hill overlooking the field, the stars bright above him. His officers urge him to march on Rome at once. "The city is open," they insist. "Take it, and the war ends." But Hannibal shakes his head. "Rome cannot be taken by fear," he says, "only by time." He turns away from the battlefield, his shadow stretching long across the corpses. "Let them rebuild," he murmurs. "The higher they rise, the harder they fall." The fires of Cannae burn through the night, and from their light legends are born, of courage, cruelty, and the one-eyed general who brought the Republic to its knees. The smoke of Cannae drifts for weeks, carried by the summer winds across the plains of Apulia, a dark reminder that even gods can bleed. Nearly 1/5 of Rome's adult male population lies dead. Every street in the city echoes with mourning. Temples overflow with grieving mothers. For the first time in living memory, Rome fears extinction. Hannibal's camp, meanwhile, is alive with triumph. Gauls dance around bonfires, Iberians sing victory songs, Numidian horsemen parade captured standards. The air hums with the wild euphoria of the impossible. In a single day they've destroyed Rome's greatest army, and with it, the illusion of her invincibility. Yet amid the celebration, Hannibal himself is calm, almost sombre. He sits at a table littered with Roman armour and broken swords, his one good eye fixed on the horizon. His brother Mago enters, exhilarated. "We have them, brother! Rome is finished! March now, and the city will fall!" Hannibal looks up slowly. "No," he says. Michael stares at him, stunned. "No?" Hannibal rises, the lamplight flickering against his scarred face. "You cannot strike the heart while the limbs still fight. Rome is not just a city. It is an idea, and ideas don't burn easily." It's a controversial decision. His officers plead with him to march on Rome immediately. The gates are open, they argue, the Senate in chaos, the city undefended. But Hannibal refuses. His army, victorious though it is exhausted, bloodied, and deep in enemy territory with no siege equipment and few supplies. To attack Rome now would be to risk everything. Instead, he chooses patience, strategy, the same patience that carried him over the Alps. Rome will destroy herself, he says quietly. We need only give her time. So he moves south. His victories have already shaken the Republic's alliances. Now he aims to make those cracks permanent. City by city, he offers Italy a choice: join Carthage or share Rome's fate. Some resist and burn, others bow and open their gates. The most important of these is Capua, second only to Rome in wealth and splendour. Its people, proud and resentful of Roman arrogance, welcome Hannibal like a liberator. He enters the city to cheers, his elephants paraded through marble streets, his soldiers showered with flowers. Capua becomes his winter capital, a base of operations, and a symbol that Rome's grip on Italy is not unbreakable. But Capua's luxury is a double-edged sword. Hannibal's veterans, hardened by years of hardship, now find themselves surrounded by baths, feasts, and soft beds. The Romans later claim that Capua conquered Hannibal, that his men grew lazy, dulled by comfort. In truth, the general never relaxes. He spends his days planning, writing, forging alliances, but time is slipping away, and he knows it. In Rome, the Senate does what it does best. It refuses to die. Even after losing tens of thousands, they raise new legions. They call every man capable of holding a spear. Slaves are promised freedom for service. Debtors are pardoned if they enlist. Old weapons are reforged. Armour is stripped from temples. The Republic fights not for victory now, but for survival, and Rome adapts. Quintus Fabius, the delayer, returns to prominence. His strategy, mocked before, becomes law. No direct battles, no grand confrontations. Instead, exhaustion, attrition, denial. Wherever Hannibal moves, the Romans burn the fields, hide the grain, poison the wells. They give him nothing to eat, nowhere to rest. At the same time, Roman diplomats move through Italy like spiders, weaving their web again. They remind the wavering cities that Carthage cannot protect them forever. Slowly, painfully, Rome's alliances begin to hold. Hannibal sees it, but there's little he can do. His supply lines stretch thin, his reinforcements blocked by Roman fleets patrolling the Mediterranean. The army in Spain, commanded by his brother Hasdrubal, fights its own desperate battles against Scipio's father and uncle. Carthage itself offers little support, distracted by politics and fear. Hannibal, for all his genius, stands alone. Still, he refuses to yield. His strategy shifts, from conquest to endurance, from attack to pressure. He becomes the ghost of Italy, appearing where least expected, vanishing into the hills before Rome can strike back. His cavalry raids the countryside, his infantry seizes forts and burns supply depots. Every victory, no matter how small, is another reminder that the Republic's wounds haven't healed. Years pass this way, 6, then 8, then 10. The war becomes a legend before it even ends. Children grow up under the shadow of Hannibal's name. Farmers in Latium glance at the hills at dusk and whisper, "He's out there." But Hannibal knows time is changing the game. Rome is learning faster than Carthage can respond. The Republic has found a new kind of soldier, one who fights not for glory, but for vengeance. Among them, a familiar name begins to rise: Publius Cornelius Scipio, the young man who once saved his father's life at Ticinus. Now a general himself, he fights in Spain, winning victory after victory against Carthage's forces. His intelligence, his calm, even his charisma, remind many of Hannibal himself. "Another me," Hannibal murmurs when he hears of him. "Good." The gods love symmetry, but for now Hannibal still reigns in Italy. Rome can't defeat him. Carthage can't replace him. His legend grows heavier with every passing year. At night he walks alone through the quiet streets of Capua, past the sleeping soldiers and the flickering torches. The wind carries faint echoes, cries of the dead, laughter of the living, the distant hum of Rome rebuilding. He looks north, toward the invisible city that refuses to fall and whispers, "How much longer will you burn?" And in the silence that follows, even he is not sure whether he's asking Rome or himself. By the time Hannibal has spent 15 years in Italy, the war feels eternal. Cities rise and fall, fields bloom and burn, and yet neither side yields. Rome refuses to die. Carthage refuses to send help. Hannibal stands suspended between the two, the man who shattered the Republic but cannot finish it. His hair is greyer now, his face gaunt. The old fire still burns in his single eye, but there's something else behind it. Calculation mixed with fatigue. He's won every major battle in Italy, Trebia, Trasimene, Cannae, but the victories have turned hollow. They've filled graves, not empires. He's still in enemy land, still cut off, still waiting for the reinforcements that never come. Each season repeats the same cycle. The Romans advance, Hannibal outmaneuvers, they chase him, he vanishes. He's become a ghost story, a shadow that haunts the countryside. Farmers plough their fields under his distant gaze. Towns surrender one week, revolt the next. Even his allies grow uneasy, their faith fraying like worn banners. Capua, once the jewel of his Italian campaign, is the first to fall. The Romans besiege it for months, choking off food and supplies. Hannibal marches to relieve it but arrives too late. The city starves, its leaders are executed, its gates burn. It's a wound he feels more deeply than he admits. He watches the smoke rise from the horizon and murmurs, "They were brave. Too brave to stand alone." Rome, emboldened by each small gain, begins to strike back. Fabius's slow war of attrition turns into something more coordinated. Armies led by Marcellus, the sword of Rome, retake towns and fortresses one by one. The Roman fleet dominates the sea, cutting Hannibal off from Spain and Africa. Meanwhile, in Iberia, a young general named Scipio, the same boy who rescued his father at Ticinus, is now turning the tide. He captures New Carthage, the very stronghold Hannibal once built, and wins over Spain's tribes with mercy rather than fear. His victories send tremors through Carthage itself. When word reaches Hannibal, he says nothing for a long time. Finally he laughs, a soft, tired sound. "So, the cub grows teeth," he says. "Perhaps the gods have chosen a new rival for me." Years pass. Hannibal's army dwindles, not from defeat but from distance. Disease, desertion, and the slow drain of endless campaigning. He still commands loyalty, but the numbers no longer lie. Rome now fields fresh legions every year. His replacements never come. Carthage's senate, riddled with corruption and fear, continues to hesitate. They send token aid, a few ships, promises that mean nothing. Their wealth feeds politics, not soldiers. Hannibal, disgusted, writes to them, "You use gold to bribe each other when iron would save you." He knows the end is approaching. In the south, near Bruttium, the toe of Italy, he digs in, establishing fortified camps, training the remnants of his veterans. The men follow him not because they believe in victory anymore, but because they cannot imagine following anyone else. They call him Rex Invictus, the unconquered king. Then, the long-awaited message arrives. His brother Hasdrubal has escaped Spain and crossed the Alps with a new army. For a moment, hope returns. 2 Barcas, 2 armies, north and south, could crush Rome between them. Hannibal's eyes flash with the old fire. "Tell the men," he says, "our brother comes." But fate has other plans. At the Metaurus River in 207 BCE, Hasdrubal's army collides with Roman forces led by Gaius Nero. The battle is fierce, but Hasdrubal is outnumbered. When the fight is lost, he spurs his horse into the enemy line, choosing death over capture. The Romans, eager to break Hannibal's spirit, send his severed head south, thrown into his camp under cover of night. When Hannibal sees it, he says nothing. He dismisses the soldiers, kneels beside the grisly trophy, and covers it with his cloak. "At least you kept your oath," he whispers. The war's last light begins to fade. Rome now presses hard from all sides. Hannibal's Italian allies surrender one after another, swayed by promises of leniency. The Carthaginian Senate, desperate, recalls its surviving generals to defend Africa. For the first time in decades, Hannibal receives an order, not a request, to return home. He stands on the shore of Calabria, the Italian wind tugging at his cloak. The same sea that brought him here now glitters before him, a cold mirror of all he's lost. Behind him, Italy stretches silent, the graves of his men, the ashes of his victories. Ahead, across the sea, waits a homeland that betrayed him, even as it begged for his genius. He mounts his horse and turns to his veterans. "We came to break Rome," he says softly, "and instead we made her stronger." But she will remember. The soldiers bow their heads. None speak. As his ships sail west, the Italian coast recedes, a shadow in the mist. Hannibal watches until it disappears. The wind howls through the rigging, carrying with it the faint echo of battles long past. The cries at Cannae, the clash at Trasimene, the flames of Saguntum. The man who brought Rome to the brink of annihilation is leaving her soil for the last time. Behind him, the Republic rebuilds. Ahead, destiny waits. One final reckoning on the fields of his own homeland. The sea to Africa is calm, deceptively so. As Hannibal's ships cut across the waters that once carried his father's fleet, he stands at the prow, silent, watching the horizon. He hasn't seen Carthage in nearly 2 decades. Behind him lie the bones of a generation. Friends, brothers, soldiers, elephants, and dreams. Ahead lies a city that no longer knows him. When the sails finally catch sight of the African coast, the old general feels the weight of time pressing against his armour. The harbour of Carthage gleams in the sunlight, but it's smaller than he remembers. Its once great docks are quieter, its walls patched, its banners faded. He can smell the city before he sees it. Salt, myrrh, and the faint scent of decay. The people greet him not as a hero, but as a ghost. Children point and whisper. Elders avert their eyes. Only the soldiers still bow with reverence, murmuring his name, Barca. He walks through the streets of his birth, past the temples of Baal Hammon and Tanit, past the palace where he once swore vengeance as a child. It feels smaller, fragile. Not the Carthage he carried in his heart. In the council chamber the senators await him, men who stayed behind while he fought their wars. "Hannibal Barca," the eldest says, voice thin as parchment, "we welcome you home. But you come at a desperate hour." Scipio has landed in Africa for a moment. The old fire flickers behind Hannibal's scarred eye. Scipio, the name that has haunted the edge of his thoughts for years, the Roman cub who grew into a lion. "Then," Hannibal says softly, "the gods have a sense of humour. The 2 greatest generals of their age are finally on the same continent. Scipio Africanus, young, brilliant, patient, has learned from Hannibal's every move. He fights with cunning, not brute strength. His legions have already crushed Carthage's forces at Utica. His message to the Senate of Carthage is clear: surrender Hannibal, or face extinction. The Carthaginians, terrified, beg Hannibal to negotiate. "You must make peace," they plead. "Carthage cannot endure another war." Hannibal listens, then laughs. Not mockery, but exhaustion. "I offered peace once," he reminds them, "before Saguntum. Rome answered with fire. You think they've changed?" Still, he agrees to meet Scipio. The 2 men, opposites in age, culture, and fate, sit beneath a white tent on the plains near Zama, 202 BCE. The air between them hums with history. Scipio is calm, courteous, almost reverent. Hannibal, greyer but unbroken, studies him like a reflection of his younger self. They speak plainly, without anger. Hannibal offers peace. Carthage will give up its foreign claims, pay tribute, surrender its fleet. Scipio listens, then replies, "It is too late for half measures." The meeting ends with a bow, not a handshake. Both men know what comes next. 2 days later, the armies face each other on the plain. Hannibal commands what's left of Carthage: 20,000 infantry, a handful of cavalry, and 80 war elephants. His veterans from Italy, now old men, form the core of his line. Scipio commands nearly 30,000, bolstered by Numidian cavalry, the same horsemen who once fought for Hannibal, now turned against him. As dawn breaks, Hannibal rides before his troops. "You have fought the world," he tells them. "Today you fight for the earth beneath your feet. Let Rome remember that Carthage died standing." The elephants charge first, but Scipio is ready. Trumpets blare. Roman soldiers open lanes in their ranks, letting the beasts rush harmlessly through. The battle becomes a whirlwind. Dust screams steel. For hours it sways back and forth, neither side giving ground. Then, the Numidian cavalry strikes from the flanks, encircling Hannibal's army. The same maneuver he used at Cannae, now turned against him. By afternoon, it's over. The field of Zama runs red. Hannibal fights until his sword breaks, then signals the retreat. His veterans fall around him, still forming ranks even as they die. When he finally leaves the field, his cloak torn and his horse limping, he knows the truth. It's finished. Carthage sues for peace. The terms are brutal. The fleet surrendered, the army disbanded, tribute demanded. Rome's vengeance is measured, not immediate. They want Carthage alive, but broken. Hannibal, ever the realist, signs the treaty himself. In the years that follow, he serves briefly as a statesman, reforming taxes, fighting corruption, trying to rebuild the city he once fought for. But his success breeds jealousy. The same senators who once begged for his help now fear his influence. When Rome demands his extradition, he knows what must come next. He flees east, to Tyre, to Antioch, to the far reaches of the Hellenistic world. Everywhere he goes, kings seek his counsel, craving the wisdom of the man who once humbled Rome. But he is restless, haunted by the sound of marching feet that never stops. Age finds him in exile, living quietly near the shores of Bithynia. When Roman envoys come for him at last, he smiles, not bitterly, but peacefully. "Let us free Rome from the burden of this old man," he says. Then, from a ring on his finger, he takes a small dose of poison. His final words, according to legend, "Let the Romans never find my bones." The sea outside his window shimmers in the fading light, and Hannibal Barca, son of Hamilcar, scourge of Rome, last lion of Carthage, closes his eyes. Centuries later, historians will still argue what destroyed him: fate, pride, or the indifference of his own city. But perhaps the truth is simpler, that no mortal man, however brilliant, could outlast an empire that refused to die. And so, the story ends where it began, in the ruins of a dream and the silence of the sea. Carthage would burn again a century later, wiped from the earth by the same Rome he once nearly destroyed, but his name would endure. For as long as history remembers fear, it will whisper Hannibal. The fires fade now. The battlefields of Saguntum, Trebia, Cannae, and Zama sink into the quiet of centuries. You can almost hear the wind moving across the stones, the whisper of a story that has finally gone to rest. You lean back, eyes half closed, letting the echoes drift away. The horns, the swords, the elephants, the roar of a man who dared the impossible. All of it recedes into dusk. The war is over. The ghosts of Rome and Carthage finally sleep. Hannibal's footsteps fade beneath the tide of time, but somewhere in that long silence, a lesson remains, that courage and tragedy often walk the same road, that greatness always carries a cost, and that even the most brilliant fire burns itself to ash. The sea sighs. The stars above Carthage flicker one by one, their light soft and forgiving. You can almost smell the salt and hear the gulls circling over the ruins. The world moves on as it always does, and you, listener, dreamer, witness, are left with only the hum of history. So breathe out, let the dust settle, let the story rest. Good night, traveller. You've walked far enough for one night.